Welcome back everyone to Racing Reviews, and welcome back to another episode of our Formula 1 2020 team debriefs. Today, it's the turn of Renault, a team that will no longer be on the grid in 2021 as they begin their transition into Alpine Formula 1 team. So technically, for now at least anyway, this will be the final season of Renault in Formula 1, at least as a title name, as they will still be continuing to produce engines into the foreseeable future. Right, if you are new and you're not quite sure what we do with these videos, we start off talking about the overall team themselves, and then we take a look at the drivers, a head-to-head between today's drivers, Daniel Ricciardo, the shoey master himself, and Esteban Ocon, right at the end, putting them all in a giant tier list, comparing each driver on the 2020 grid. So as always, if you are new, feel free to subscribe. I hope you all enjoy, but let's talk about Renault. Another weird season for them, and I say weird because Renault are a team with huge ambitions. Like McLaren, they've been stuck in this midfield since the team's return in 2016, and slowly but surely they've been working their way to the front, and this year the clear target was to be on the podium. They succeeded. In fact, 3 podiums between their 2 drivers, 2 for Daniel Ricciardo and 1 for Esteban Ocon, producing a car that was certainly capable of scoring more podiums this year and certainly in the mix for that 3rd place in the constructors' standings. The difficulty was, though, is that McLaren and Racing Point also were in a very similar situation, and Renault, despite having a car which at points this year looked to be the clear 3rd best, they ended the season in 5th in the constructors' standings. Again, it's hard to place how good that is because they're behind McLaren, they're behind Racing Point, but they're in front of Ferrari. They built a car that was capable of being 3rd. So a weird season, I feel, is the right word to use. Certainly 2020 was a big step forward over 2019. 2018, where they did finish best of the rest, Nico Hülkenberg having a mega season that year, I think was a little better than 2020. But the target this year, for sure, heading into the season, would be podiums. They've done that, they've ticked that box for next year. Daniel Ricciardo, of course, is leaving at the end of this season. In comes Fernando Alonso, this big rebrand they will be hoping will produce more podiums, a chance of victories, but I think for the newly rebranded Alpine team, they're going to have to wait a little bit longer, 2022, until that dream starts becoming a reality. So after an up and down season, let's jump over to our tier list. So far for our teams, our grid looks like this, with Mercedes, our only legendary team, McLaren and AlphaTauri in the great category. Racing Point have gone in good, and Alfa Romeo, sadly, after a disappointing 2020, are the only team in bad. Renault, I'm putting in good. A solid year, certainly not average with those 3 podiums. Ricciardo had a mega season. Ocon, a lot of learning, a lot of building. We're going to talk about both drivers in a moment's time. But overall for the team, some targets smashed. Others, in terms of where they finished in the constructors, their competitiveness at the end of the season, a little bit more work to do. So I think along with Racing Point, side by side in the good category is perfect placement. But the bit I've been looking forward to with Renault, the drivers. Let's start off with our driver head-to-head, which unsurprisingly is heavily in favour of old Daniel Ricciardo. 15-2 in the qualifying battle. Those 2 times Ocon out-qualified Ricciardo, coming at the 2nd race at the Styrian Grand Prix and the final race at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. So a big chunk of this season, Ricciardo comfortably beating Esteban on a Saturday. And with a qualifying average of 7.7 compared to Ocon's 9.9, certainly that's a clear aspect Ocon's going to have to improve on going into 2021. The race head-to-head, a similar story. 13-4 on a Sunday. Points, Daniel Ricciardo wiped the floor with Ocon. 119-62, almost double his teammates' points. A best qualifying of 4th for Ricciardo and 5th for Esteban Ocon. However, a best finish of 3rd for Daniel Ricciardo is beaten by Ocon's 2nd place at the Sakhir Grand Prix. Let's talk about Danny Ric first. That's why you're here. I'm sure many of you cannot wait to discuss Daniel Ricciardo in the comment section down below, but I've got a few interesting thoughts on Ocon in a moment's time. But the Honey Badger, We all love him. What an incredible character in the Formula 1 paddock. And what a mega season 2020 was. 2 more podiums to add to his career tally. One coming at Imola, but one just a couple of races before at the Eiffel Grand Prix. It was a long time coming. The return of the Shoei this season as well. Plenty of smiles, which is something I feel we've not seen from Ricciardo for quite some years now. His first podium since that incredible Monaco victory in the mid-season of 2018. He deserved it massively. Those drives, even when he wasn't fighting for podiums this year, so consistent, right up there in that fight for best of the rest, in the fight for 4th in the driver standings, beating both McLaren drivers, both Ferrari drivers, even beating Alex Albon is proof enough what a mega year Daniel had. And I think what was most impressive is that he knew he was leaving Renault at the end of this season. And where some drivers and some team relationships you could see really started to crumble, knowing that things were coming apart at the end of the year, I feel Ricciardo and Renault went the complete opposite and really kicked on in 2020. I feel Ricciardo really became a part of that team where I didn't really feel that in 2019. He was a team leader. His role really developed and flourished in the latter stages of this year, and they're really going to miss him. Not just for his on-track abilities, but also that character off-track, something I talk about quite often with Daniel Ricciardo and what he brings to a Formula 1 team. And bringing in Alonso is something that I'm not too sure the team are ready for. And I really do feel it's a big gamble bringing Fernando back into Formula 1. Will he be on the levels of Ricciardo? I highly doubt it, at least in the first 6 months. Will he be a flop? There's also a possibility, and Ocon really may have to come out of his shell in 2021. And whilst Ricciardo was smashing it this year, one of the drivers of the season, his teammates struggled. And actually Esteban has some work to do heading into 2021. Of course, we can't forget Ocon did have a year out in 2019, and that relearning, readapting himself to Formula 1 was always going to take a little bit of time, and that's why I'm hesitant to say Alonso's going to jump back in and do great things. Because Ocon proved at Force India, when push comes to shove, he has got the skills to pay the bills. I just don't think we saw it enough this year. And I think that first 6 months, the first start of the year with such a long time out of the sport, really affected his confidence behind the wheel. And with Ricciardo putting in mega performance after mega performance, I think that kind of all snowballed into just a bigger and bigger hill to climb for Ocon to recover his season. And I think what was clear to see over the course of this year is Ocon did get better as the season went on. He was closer to Ricciardo in qualifying. He was much closer during the Grand Prix. And what we started to see, especially in the last 4 or 5 Grand Prix, is Ocon was there when it came to strategy decisions for Renault to make. He was in the mix with the Racing Points, in the mix with the McLarens. And actually, people forget that race in Sakhir. If he had stayed in front of Sergio Perez before that safety car, we could be in a situation right now where Ocon is a Grand Prix winner. Of course, that didn't happen, and I don't want to get too carried away, but I think that was proof enough that he had really made strides over the course of this season. But there is still work to do. He's not there yet. Up against Alonso, it's going to be a completely new challenge for him. Is he ready for it? We're going to have to wait and see. So, before we go, let's jump over to our tier list. I really enjoy this bit. So far, our grid looks like this, with Perez, Hamilton and George Russell Mercedes variant all in legendary. Hülkenberg and Gasly are in great. We've got the 2 McLaren, Stroll and the 2 Alfa Romeos in the good category, with Bottas and Danny Kvyat in average. For our 2 Renault boys, our boys in yellow, we're not going to say that for a long time, I guess. I have gone with this. Daniel Ricciardo, a mega season. Not quite reaching legendary, although the Shoei did return, so I guess the Shoei can go in legendary, but everything else was pretty awesome in 2020. Ocon, I really struggled to put on this, because the latter half of the season was certainly good. Solid. It's what you want from a driver alongside Ricciardo, but that first half of the season was really lacking. Qualifying needs to do better. In the Grand Prix, I just want to see those elbows out a little bit more, just like we saw in Portugal. So I'm looking forward to next year. but his return this year was average. That is how our grid is looking for today, and hopefully you will agree with me. But if not, let me know in the comment section down below. Tomorrow, the mailbox is back, and on Sunday, our next debrief will be Williams. A mega season for them in more ways than one, and lots to talk about. So hopefully you can join me for those. But for today, for now, thank you all very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you are new, and I hope to see you all in the next one.